Hey, you're listening to the Riverdale podcast. This is episode number 105. My name is Jonathan. Welcome to lovely Riverdale, USA. This is a weekly Archie Comics fan podcast. We update every Saturday morning, and every week we break things down into 4 categories. The first category is the book of the week. That's the comic book I read this week. Sometimes it's a new comic book, sometimes it's an old comic book, but it's always an Archie comic book. We move then to the news of the week. That's what happened in the world of Archie in the week since our last podcast. Then on to new releases. That's what came out this past week and what will be coming up this coming week from Archie. And we're going to wrap up today with an announcement of sorts. We'll get to that when we get to it. First of all, as you may have already noticed, this is going to be an extra long episode. We got some big news this week, and we've got a couple of guests coming in to talk about that news, give their thoughts, a little bit of punditry here on the Riverdale podcast. So it's going to be a fun show, a good time, but first things first, let's get into the book of the week. This week's book of the week is Afterlife with Archie, number 4. Geez, you guys, I spent some time talking about Afterlife with Archie today, and I've really come to like it. I know that I was hard on the first issue for sure, maybe the first couple issues. I'm really coming around on this, and I think what has made the difference for me is that I've come to really trust Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa. I really have the sense now that he understands these characters in a way that I don't know whether I didn't believe earlier in the series or I didn't understand earlier in the series, but especially in reading this issue, I got the sense that this is Archie. I've generally had a problem with the way that he portrayed Betty and Veronica in prior issues, and they're not in this issue at all. This issue stars almost entirely Archie, and it's intense and it's gruesome, but at its very core, it is Archie Andrews doing his best, doing the right thing, and protecting his family to a ridiculous degree, an intense and upsetting degree. It's a great issue. We're going to get a little spoilery, but let's get into the issue itself. We're treated to some flashbacks of when Archie gets his first dog. And this is a really skillful device that's used here. We're introduced in this flashback to the moment that Archie meets Vegas, his dog. And this leads us to a scene later, and then also in which we see Vegas defending Archie. And it also sets up the concept of mortality. There's a conversation had between Mr. and Mrs. Andrews about how Mrs. Andrews, I always forget their names, Fred, and I don't remember his mom's name. A conversation between them in which she states that she really learned about mortality from the death of her dog. And so we get that in this issue. We, spoiler alert, we get the death of Archie's dog, who dies defending him against zombie hot dog. And it sounds ridiculous as I say it, but it is a warm and heartfelt and well done story. So this issue is really about Archie's loss of innocence in all of this. It's about him being a sort of a protector of sorts. The goal in this issue is that Archie has, as of last issue, left the lodge compound where everybody's hiding out. He's gone home to find his family, and unfortunately, when he gets there, he runs into, as I said, zombified Hot Dog, and Vegas attacks Hot Dog, and it enables Archie to get into the house. When Archie gets into the house, he finds his mom in a sort of comatose kind of state because his dad has been infected, and Archie has to do something pretty gruesome to protect his mom and get them both out of the house. And in a really, I hate to say like a fun and playful moment, but in a cool moment, they run into the garage, and there is the like old school jalopy, the like Model T, the old Ford, sitting in the garage, and he and his mom get out using that. Now, throughout, we have fantastic Francesco Francavilla art. There's a great contrast between the flashbacks. There's a great panel progression where we get the flashbacks at the beginning, and then we get, which are set in like a brighter hue, a brighter tone than the other sort of modern day pages, and then the modern day pages are set in these deep blacks with this really sharp orangey color to Archie's hair. And then there's a panel in which Archie is sort of fighting his dad, and they're cutting back and forth between those flashbacks. And it's hugely effective. There's a lot of panels on that page. It's really, really something. Also in this issue, two other big plot points. One is Cheryl and Jason are hanging out in their house, and their house seems to exist in a time warp of like somewhere between 1967 and 1972. There's a weird sort of lava lampy mod kind of sense of design to the inside of here. I'm not sure what the intention is here, but it looks great. And it definitely harkens back to the old 70s Archie horror stories, the few of those that there were. And we see a sort of rift between them. Jason seems to want to stay put, while Cheryl wants to get out of there, does not seem to be happy with the relationship, whatever relationship that may be, that's going on between them. And finally, we wrap up the issue after Archie has escaped with his mom in the jalopy. We see that the zombies, if we're calling them zombies, are congregating. All of the zombies within Riverdale are being brought together seemingly by Jughead. We see Hot Dog come up to Jughead's side and kind of lick his hand. And we're leading into the 5th issue, the last issue of this first arc, the Escape from Riverdale arc. And things are really, really ramping up. You get the impression with those last few panels that the zombies are getting together, working together, have some sort of hive mind, some sort of end goal. And next issue, with any luck, we'll see what that goal is. So it's cool stuff. It's fun stuff. And as I said, Archie is the star of the show in this issue, finally. It's been largely an ensemble piece until now, and I feel like with the last issue, I really clicked into the series, and with this issue being about Archie and his, fundamental devotion to family and to protecting the ones he loves, I really, really locked in here. I'm really excited to see where this goes, and I'm super, super excited about this week's Book of the Week, Afterlife with Archie, number 4. All right, in Archie news this week, just a day after our last podcast last week, Sunday evening, the announcement came that Archie Comics has appointed not only a new but their first ever chief creative officer, their first CCO, and this has gone to Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa, which is great. We know his work in the aforementioned Afterlife with Archie. He wrote the Glee crossover last year. He's been working really closely with co-CEO John Goldwater on, who knows what. I know they've been working on the Archie movie and things like that. He's really been sort of folded into the company and the inner workings of things over the last couple of years. So it's cool to see him get that position. His first bit of business, or at least his first announced bit of business, is that he has brought in Lena Dunham of Girls fame, of HBO Girls fame, and Tiny Furniture, a popular writer and actress at this moment, and has tapped her to write a 4-issue Archie arc coming at some point next year. This is cool stuff, so I wanted to invite in a few people to talk about it, solicited some phone calls, wanted to get a variety of opinions on this. So I'm excited to talk to some folks who have a sort of broad knowledge of comics in general and a particular interest in Archie comics. So first I'd like to introduce Johanna Draper Carlson. She is the writer, one of a few writers on comicsworthreading.com. It's an excellent blog and a great resource for a lot of the books you've heard about, and then a lot of the books that sort of slip through the cracks. She's really great at writing concise reviews of books, and can't recommend that blog enough. Comicsworthreading.com. Johanna Draper Carlson, welcome back to lovely Riverdale, USA.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I bet Riverdale is not covered in snow like Madison, Wisconsin is.
It's entirely possible, although the covers of the Double Digest that came out this week are covered in snow.
Well, but Riverdale's the kind of place where you only have snow where you want it. Like, they seem to be, 20 minutes from the beach, 20 minutes from the mountains, maybe further.
Nice clear sidewalks all the time, too.
Yeah. It's the ideal small town, right?
For sure. We got, one piece of news that led into another piece of news this week. So what I'm going to do is we'll kind of separate them at first, and then we'll kind of mush them together, I guess. But the first news that came out this past Sunday evening was that Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa is the new Chief Creative Officer of Archie. I'm going to make that statement, as you already know, and let you go. What do you think?
I think it probably indicates a real desire on the part of the publisher to get more media interest in their comics and properties. The original coverage I saw, I did blog about it Sunday night during the Oscars, was the New York Times piece.
Yep.
And they make a point to note that, I'm going to call him Roberto, although I've never had the pleasure of meeting him because I fear I will mangle his last name.
Okay.
They make a big deal of him being in Los Angeles. He's got Glee writing credits. He's currently on the staff of that show. They seem to be, and they mentioned that, they have a whole bunch of characters. It's not just Archie. They have Sabrina. They have Josie for that rock and roll interest. They have superheroes. They have anything you would want. So I think they're really trying to get some media interest, which is what a lot of comic companies do to make money.
Certainly Marvel and DC are pushing multimedia, or are on the TV every week, or in the movie theaters.
They both are really research and development arms of movie companies now, with Marvel being owned by Disney and DC moving out to the West Coast to become a bigger part of Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and I agree. There's a lot to mine in the Archie properties. There was that story. You probably remember this better than I do. But do you remember that story a couple of years ago where they get locked in the comic shop and it's kind of like, here's a catalog of all those old Archie characters you've forgotten. Let's renew the trademarks.
Yes, Night at the Comic Shop. Yeah,
right.
They did two, actually. They did one and then a sequel.
Well, sure, because they've got more characters to get out there and remind people that are there. But those kinds of stories are great to send to people who might be interested because if you're trying to get interest in your properties, I'm imagining you got to have a pitch packet. You
Hmm.
know, you got to have something you can leave with them that shows them what they're looking at buying into.
In a modern and relevant context. You're not handing them a 60-year-old Super Duck comic book.
Well, I kind of imagine there aren't that many to go around, but yes, exactly. um, so yeah, I did find it real interesting though that last summer, there was big news that they were trying to develop an Archie live action film at Warner Brothers. And DC and Archie have actually had some connection over the years. They used to have an ad sharing program, sales program. But I find it interesting that this coverage doesn't talk about that film. Maybe because at this point it's old news until and if a movie gets made.
There was an interview, and of course, there are articles. I mean, everybody has covered this seemingly. So I'm not sure where this was exactly, but I was reading an interview in which they mentioned the movie and the fact that with the success of Afterlife with Archie, it was sort of in flux as to what they were even doing with the movie at this point. That it's not as far along as in production or even pre-production as we would have hoped.
Sure, I would have actually hoped if it had been, and that's why I don't really cover this. Oh, we've got an option news because it's very unlikely most of this stuff will turn into reality. But I would have hoped that we would have heard casting news so we could all play who should play Archie.
Yeah, for sure. And no, I don't even think they have a direction for it at this point, a tone or a concept.
Right. I mean, Afterlife with Archie, it's a good read. I was very surprised as someone who doesn't care much for zombies and horror stories.
Same here.
It's a real good read. Got some amazing art. It's tying into a trend. With Walking Dead, zombies are still hot. So it'll be interesting to see how it continues. I mean, a zombie story is innately limited duration, right? Because after you kill off all your characters, what do you do next?
How do you then add depth to the zombies so they can be interesting characters?
Right, right. Well, there was that one movie about the zombie that fell in love with the girl, but it didn't do very well, so.
So you do like Afterlife with Archie. How do you feel? I mean, do you feel like Roberto's going to have any kind of reach in terms of the publishing? I mean, obviously, it's announced that he's going to be writing an upcoming Sabrina book. How do you feel about his take or his influence on publishing going forward?
Well, in terms of his writing, I know I must have read some of the Marvel comics he wrote, but I sure don't remember any of them right now. Which doesn't that's not a slam on him. I don't remember a lot of the superhero comics I read because at this point they all kind of blur together.
Mm-hmm.
I did read his Archie Glee crossover and reviewed it, and when I did, I called it less a story and more of an illustrated essay. Because there's lots of neat parallels that, this character reminds me of that character, and look how similar some of them are, and blah, blah. But there wasn't much actual content there in terms of, but what are you going to do with the characters now that they're all here?
Mm-hmm.
I thought. And that may have been the direction he was given. I got the impression that he was supposed to line up some people. It wasn't so much that he was going to be writing a ton of stuff, because really, how much can you write when your day job is in Hollywood?
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of publishers that got in trouble with that, where they make a big deal about, we've got Hollywood name to write this project, and then one or two issues comes out, and it's just not a priority to ever get it completed.
And maybe that leads into the second piece of news very well, is that the first order of business, I guess, is Lena Dunham has been tapped to write some unnamed 4-issue arc of Archie coming next year. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it'd be interesting to see it when it arrives.
Yeah, when and if, I guess. I mean, we're still a ways out from there.
Yeah, I mean, there have been projects Archie have announced in the last couple of years that never happened. Again, not to slam anybody in particular, just that, she's got a very successful sitcom. She's supposedly writing a book. I'm sure that there are people trying to pitch her on movie stuff. She sounds like she's been a longtime Archie fan, so if it's a dream to work on this, that's terrific. That doesn't necessarily mean it'll be terrible or it'll be great. A lot depends when you have these people translating from other media on how well they actually grasp what's different about comic scripting. So some of it will depend on what artist works with her, how well they work together, how much she gets the format. There have been very good novelists who wrote poor comics because they couldn't get past the whole I must put everything in the words, so the comics were very text heavy and did not actually achieve that verbal visual blend you really want for a great comic where both the art and the text are essential to telling what's going on. Then again, she could have absorbed a ton of stuff from comics and come out with a really good story with a fresh take. That would be great too.
So the concept is, I mean, Lena Dunham's going to come in. She's going to write this comic book. Do you think that she's going to be allowed or encouraged to write a straight Archie romp, or is she going to be, writing to what people perceive to be her strengths? Is she going to have to tie in what she's doing in other media? Is it going to be sort of?
I would hope not, because I don't think that would mash up very well.
I don't think so either.
I mean, the characters on her show Girls are noticeably older than the Archie characters who are perpetually teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I would hope they wouldn't. That would strike me as very gimmicky.
Yeah.
If it was, we're going to turn the cast into Brooklyn hipsters who don't know what to do with their lives. In part because she's already telling that story elsewhere.
Exactly.
So, again, we'll have to wait and see. It's way early to be talking about any of this. And when they say 2015, that could be, 18 months from now. Whether anyone will even remember it is a good question.
Yeah. Obviously this is all early speculation.
I think it made it into that story as sort of more of a, here's the kind of thing Roberto can do for us. He can bring, celebrities to work on Archie. But I get the feeling Archie is kind of thrashing a little bit these days. Sales are way down based on the figures they report.
Mm-hmm.
There are next to no periodicals they're putting out anymore. They're really concentrating on the digests and the reprints because you can get higher price points. And they become perpetual sellers if you're talking about things like the reprint collections.
Yeah, their bookstore initiative is a huge push. They said they were releasing somewhere upwards of like 100 books this year.
You mean spine books, not
like
publications? Yeah,
like books for the book, the mainstream book market.
Yeah.
So
I would love to see an Archie movie or an Archie TV show. I would hope it was not animated the way the Sabrina cartoon you made me watch was. That didn't go well, but yeah, I think there's a ton of teen dramas on TV. A lot of them succeed by being edgy and pushing boundaries and making parents nervous.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's a place for a more wholesome, but then the question becomes whether people would watch it. Whenever you're talking about material for kids, there's a question of, are you really targeting what the kids want, or are you targeting what parents want to buy for their kids? So Archie was one of the safe alternatives on the newsstand where parents could feel comfortable. That's changed with Kevin Keller, who I think is a great concept, great idea. Regrettably, some people object to that on moral grounds.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I would watch an Archie project if it was well done and well cast. But that's always the big if, because what I want to view or read may not be what ends up coming out once all the creative process is finished.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But in summation, I guess we're playing the long game. We're waiting out to see what happens with Lena Dunham, if she's actually going to write the comic book and what it's going to be. But we would say thumbs up, thumbs down. We're excited about Roberto coming in.
Oh, I don't even have that much of an opinion. Can I do a thumb sideways?
You can do a thumb sideways for sure.
because if Archie thinks this will get them some things, it remains to be seen what those things are.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking in the article about wanting to enlist the right kinds of writers for projects, so it'll depend on what choices are made there.
Yep.
I don't want to prejudge it. I think Archie's done an excellent job of getting publicity in venues like the New York Times for some of their actions, and I guess they think that's a good thing because free publicity is always better than the kind you have to spend a lot of money on.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of wait and see.
Awesome. Well, I guess we'll leave it there. Johanna, thanks for jumping on the line and talking to us this week.
Sure, always happy to talk to you.
Cool. Next up, I want to welcome Chris Sims to the show. Chris Sims is a contributor writer over at comicsalliance.com. He's one half of the excellent War Rocket Ajax podcast. He's also one of the authors of the recently released Downset Fight from Oni Press. You can find all of his links and information to all the stuff he's working on over at about.me/Chris Sims. So, Chris Sims, welcome to lovely Riverdale, USA.
That's great to be here. It's an idyllic little peaceful town.
Yeah, it's nice here. A little cold, but we're getting by.
That's good. You get another month of all those stories of snow days before the spring wardrobes come out.
I was just talking to Johanna Draper Carlson about how the sidewalks are always clear, no matter how much snow they have, things like that.
Riverdale has an amazing public services department.
Unparalleled. So this week, we got the news that Archie has a new chief creative officer. Can I just let you roll on that? What do you think?
I'm actually really excited about it. The role of the chief creative officer, as I understand it,
Mm-hmm.
is he's the person who's kind of the ambassador to other media. The person who kind of oversees like movies, TV, video games, all stuff like that. And getting Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa in that role, I think, is a really smart thing to do. A lot of people know him as a comics writer, whether it's from the stuff that he's doing at Archie with Afterlife with Archie, which I love, or from the stuff that he's done at Marvel. But he's a guy who has a lot of connections to other places. He was the one who they brought in to rewrite the Spider-Man musical.
Mm-hmm.
He's written for Glee. He has Hollywood connections. He's a playwright. He's a screenwriter. He's worked in Hollywood. So if you're gonna have somebody whose job it is to get, and I hate saying this, but the Archie brand,
Mm-hmm.
like that's the word for it, right? If you're gonna have someone whose job it is to get the Archie brand out into Hollywood and other projects, you're gonna want a guy like Sacasa or Aguirre-Sacasa, because he has those connections. He knows how that system works, and he also loves Archie comics. Have you ever talked to him?
I haven't.
I've talked to him a couple times, and like talking to him is an absolute joy, because he just loves the Archie books so much. He loves those characters and he understands how they work. And I think that's why Afterlife with Archie is such a fun book for me, because he's twisting the formula, but he's twisting the formula that he knows so well. He's a huge Archie guy. I think it'll be really fun to see what he does. I think Archie is in this interesting era of stunts.
Yes.
Which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. You talk about stunts and stunt comics and stunt writers and everything, but at the same time, Archie, the core, again, I hate it,
Mm-hmm.
the core product has rarely been as exciting and fun as it is right now. Like, there's the Lena Dunham stuff that's coming out, and there's Afterlife, which is obviously Afterlife at its heart is kind of a publicity stunt, no matter how good it is. But then you've got the same stuff that's coming out with the mainline titles and the digest, where people have been working there for a long time are still doing really amazing work. Um, and I think it's important to note that this is the second announcement that they've made in recent weeks, after getting Alex Segura back,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
which is, if you've got two roles to fill, and your role are, we want to do PR in comics to make sure our comics are as widely known as possible, and we want to have a chief creative officer who's extending our brand into other places. I don't think there's a lot of better guys you could have had than Alex Segura and Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa in those roles.
Yeah, and if you look at the sort of strategic way that they brought in Alex and then announced Roberto's new position, and the amount of reach that announcement of the new CCO position made, I think you can point directly to Alex.
Yeah, and that's not to say that the last few guys doing PR for Archie weren't great.
Oh, not at all. I mean, I'm
Uh,
still working with Steven Scott, who's doing publicity.
Yeah,
there.
Steven's a great guy and is really good at reaching out. But Alex Segura, I mean, if, not to speak out of school,
Mm-hmm.
but having that position at Archie before, and then being so valuable to DC that they brought him back, and then having him go back to Archie, I think that tells you how just as a skilled uh, person at that job, like how valuable he is, and I think that shows. So I'm all for it. I'm very. There's my alarm to ensure that I was awake for this. Uh, I'm actually very excited about this. I think these are two very interesting and cool moves. Because again, those guys, they do love these comics, and they are very good at what they do.
So let's move on to the other piece of news that you mentioned prior of Lena Dunham coming in to write Archie comics. Because I find it interesting because we've seen celebrity casting in Archie comics before. We've had many celebrities roll through. Michael Strahan and Colby Calais. But to my knowledge, we haven't seen a quote-unquote celebrity writer come in to do it. What are your thoughts on Lena Dunham?
I know nothing about Lena Dunham.
Okay.
I know so much more about Alex Segura, the executive vice president of publicity,
Yeah.
than I do about Lena Dunham, a actual famous person. I've never seen Girls. Like I am peripherally aware of it because I watch Saturday Night Live,
Mm-hmm.
but that's as close as I come. But yeah, you mentioned that she's a stunt writer, and I think that's really interesting because there aren't a lot of people who are famous writers.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a rare kind of position to have in Hollywood, to have in the world. But a showrunner, kind of coming in and being a famous writer, that's really interesting, and I think it kind of opens up what they're going to do with Archie books from now on, because the key appeal of the Archie books is their universality. I think, that's the kind of limitation and the foundation of it, right? That they're these almost archetypes that lend themselves so well to different situations. Like it's why the humor stuff really works when it works. It's why the stuff like Afterlife works. It's why all those different kinds of stories can coexist with these characters.
I've said before that Archie's a lot more like Mickey Mouse than he is like Peter Parker.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Especially like I've been reading those 1930s Floyd Gottfredson Mickey Mouse stories lately.
Oh yeah.
And so you have the adventure Mickey Mouse and you have the comedy Mickey Mouse. And I feel like Archie's the same way. Like the things that I love about Archie, I mean, I enjoy the regular, the 8-page
Mhm.
humor strips, But the things that I really get excited about when I see them at cons are the crazy 70s serious stories.
Oh yeah.
Like the ones where Betty fights a bear and Archie has to deal with a jewelry store robbery and Veronica's being held at knife point.
Totally.
Because like all of that lines up. like they're still the same characters. Like even in Life with Archie in the future world, like they're
Yeah.
still the same characters. You just see how they react to different situations. And I think the comparison to Mickey Mouse is actually really good. So I am excited about seeing what other people do with those comics. I have no idea what that's going to be, but I'm interested.
Yeah, my hope is that with Lena Dunham coming in to write the book, that they just sort of let her do a straight Archie story and not try to lean it towards, what we know her to be doing, if that makes sense.
I think you're going to be disappointed. I mean, I would honestly, if it turns out that Lena Dunham just like had an Archie pitch in her back pocket all this time, like that's great.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. If she's like, yeah, what if Archie wins the hamburger eating contest? Like that's, I'm all for that. I don't think that's going to happen because, for a variety of reasons. I think they're bringing her in for again it's a stunt.
Mm-hmm.
B, they want to get all the people who are fans of Lena Dunham's to come in. Like that's why they do it. So the expectation of readers is that they're going to come in and get a more like the casual reader wants more of a Lena Dunham story than an Archie story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you may be right.
And I think you can do that and have it work both ways. I think it can work fine, and I think it's probably going to work fine. Like we haven't really seen one of those stunt stories go terribly wrong. I can't think of one. Like they've all been baseline enjoyable, right?
Yes. I fell off of Archie Meets Glee, but that's because I had no knowledge of Glee whatsoever.
Honestly, I did too. But what I read of it was fine.
Yeah.
I just had. I have a stack of these things to read. I have those double digests are killing me, man.
Those are huge.
But yeah, you mentioned the Michael Strahan stuff. Like those were perfectly acceptable Archie comics.
Yeah, that was adorable. The story between Moose Mason and Michael Strahan.
The insane Sarah Palin Barack Obama story.
I had completely forgotten about that.
Yeah, because it was nuts. But it was also again, perfectly acceptable Marvel comics, perfectly acceptable Archie comics. So I think that's what we're gonna get with Lena Dunham. Like, I do think it would be legitimately hilarious if that issue comes out and they announce oh yeah, she's the new writer on Betty and Veronica, monthly, and then Betty and Veronica, it's just gonna be a normal Archie Betty and Veronica story, but we're just gonna get a slightly different style of writing, which honestly, if you look at historically what's been the stuff that's moved Archie forward, that's kind of it. Tanya Del Rio comes in from outside and does that amazing run on Sabrina that I love. Dan Parent has been around for forever, 15, 20 years working on those books, but then they give him more freedom to write and to draw Betty and Veronica as pinup girls on the cover. If you've seen that guy's booth at a con, I think that's what he's into.
Yes.
But yeah, they give him a little more freedom, and he does really good work, really solid, reliable stories. I don't think that's what's going to happen with Lena Dunham. I don't think she's going to be announced as the new writer of Betty and Veronica. I do, but I don't think it's impossible either.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the hilarious thing.
That's when we look at the last 5 years of Archie Comics, when we talk about since John Goldwater came in as the co-CEO, that's when I totally locked in. That's when Archie became the thing that I love. Is just you really honestly never know what's coming next.
John Goldwater is honestly, I think he's the smartest comics publisher going today.
Those are big words.
Especially since I'm working with several comics publishers. But I mean, I think he came in and realized that Archie had a very safe place. Archie had a very safe position at doing what they were doing. But when you look at creatively how those comics have been moved forward. It's we talk about the stunts and how the stunts are designed to grab headlines. The Jersey Shore comics, the Glee crossover, like they're pop culture bandwagon jumpers, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, he's a guy, and I've heard this from a lot of people that I've talked to at Archie, just interviewing them, and I've met John Goldwater. He's a very nice guy, but he's the guy who comes in and is the driving force of wanting to move these comics forward and do different things with them. And when you don't do that, I think Archie books can very easily get stale. When Archie books feel retro and it's not on purpose, that's when they're not good.
Exactly.
And again, in 2 years, this Lena Dunham issue might feel dated.
And that's the point.
Yeah, that Glee story already feels kind of dated.
Mm-hmm.
The Jersey Shore story certainly does. But there's other stuff that doesn't, like from that same era. There's other stuff that's just every bit as universal and current. And I think that's vital for keeping it alive. And I think a lot of that comes down from John Goldwater, like kind of realizing that he's got these characters that can do anything and that are kind of universally beloved. Like, I mean, who doesn't like Archie? I mean, that's easy for me to say to you, right?
Yes, of course.
I'm sure somebody out there doesn't. But, you talk about Mickey Mouse. I think there's a natural inclination in these stories to kind of like these characters because they're so easy to relate to.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very valuable.
So, to wrap up, can we safely say Alberto Aguirre-Sacasa as CCO, thumbs up?
Yes.
Lena Dunham, thumbs up?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay.
I mean, I'll read it.
Yeah,
Of course
totally.
I'm gonna read it.
Awesome.
Now, I will say, it might be bad. I don't know. But, I'm sure people are going to want to read it one way or another, and that's what they want.
Totally. Well, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
This has been awesome. Thanks for coming in as an Archie Comics pundit of sorts.
No, I almost never get to talk about Archie. And I love it. I love it.
Cool.
So I am always up for it.
Cool. So do we. Thanks very much. Also, earlier this week, I put out the word that we'd be talking about this on this week's show, and a friend of the show, former guest on the show, blogger and cool guy, John Troughton, called in with his thoughts on the news of the week. Let's listen to that now.
Hey, Jonathan, it's your friend John from Iowa City, and I was calling about the news about Roberto, I always forget his name, Roberta Aguirre-Sacasa, being named the Chief Creative Officer at Archie Comics, and just seeking input. And to be honest, it's kind of an exciting thing. I think he's done a really good job of taking a simple concept, which is a variant cover featuring Archie hiding from zombies in a cemetery, and envisioning a pretty well done vision and well received vision of ongoing comic book series featuring that apocalypse and the magic and the zombies and all the horror there. And I think he really took what people kind of were assuming were going to be a really bad joke and made it into a really great content, really turned it into really good content. So I'm really excited to see how he's going to do as Chief Creative Officer with helping Archie Comics really continue to re-look at itself and re-envision what it can be for the audience of tomorrow, while also kind of attending to us current fans who are really liking this new vision. And hopefully we'll still have some of the stuff that's a little bit more familiar, some of the, comedic content and all that, and the jokes. So I'm pretty excited. As far as the one writer coming on that wrote the girls program for or created the girls program for HBO, I'm kind of like that show as you were with Glee. I've never watched the show, much less heard much about it. So I am taking it I'm taking other people's words that it's a really good show, and I'm kind of excited to see what she has to offer. So anyways, I hope you have a good show, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.
That's John Troughton calling in about this week's big news. I want to thank Johanna Draper-Carlson for taking some time to talk to us this week. I want to thank Chris Sims for taking some time out to talk to us as well. Big, exciting, cool stuff going on in the world of Archie. New releases for this past Wednesday, March the 5th, are as follows. Of course, the book of the week, Afterlife with Archie number 4 for $2.99. We also got Archie Double Digest number 249 for $3.99. Mega Man number 34 for $2.99. Our first super-sized Sonic Digest for $6.99. Also, World of Archie Double Digest number 37 for $3.99. And finally this week, the second volume of the Sonic the Hedgehog Mega Man Worlds Collide crossover. That's the next 4 issues of that 12-part crossover from last summer. The second volume in trade paperback is $11.99 out this week. Coming up next week, March the 12th, we get Archie number 653 for $2.99. That is the final part of the World Tour storyline, written and drawn by Dan Parent. That's been a lot of fun. Excited to see what happens with that. Also next week, The Fox, number 5. This is the final issue of that series. I'm excited to read that. That's been a fun and weird and I guess unpredictable would be the word for it. It's been a super lot of fun. I'm excited to see how that wraps up. The Fox number 5 next week with a number of variant covers. Somewhere in upwards of 5 or 6 variant covers on that. Be on the lookout for that. The Fox number 5 next week for $2.99. Finally next week, Sonic Universe number 61 for $2.99. On the digital side of things, over at Comixology and the Archie Comics app and iVerse and everywhere you get your digital comics. This week's 100-page digital exclusive is Dancing with the Archies. That is $3.99. So those are your new releases for this past Wednesday, the 5th, this coming Wednesday, the 12th, and your digital releases of the week from Archie Comics. All right, finally today, this week we are rolling out the Riverdale Residence Program. This is hopefully going to be a fun, cool thing, but primarily what we're doing is bringing some money into the podcast. With all transparency, putting the show together costs money, and it takes time. So what I'm going to try to do is bring some money in and give something back to you guys in return. This is the plan as it stands. You can head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. On the left side of your screen, you'll see a contribution box. You can sign up in 3 tiers, basically 2 tiers, 3 if you're crazy. The first tier is to become a junior citizen. That is to set up a recurring payment of $3 a month. You'll send in $3 a month for as long as you'd like. Cancel anytime you want. You can become a senior citizen of Riverdale for $5 a month. Send in $5 every month until you wish to stop. And if you are crazy with wealth, you can sign up to be Hiram Lodge himself and contribute $10 a month to the show. Now, what's in it for you? Well, we're going to be doing giveaways. We're going to be doing drawings. So if you sign up and you become a resident of Riverdale, I haven't mapped out everything just yet. But first of all, you're going to want to put your address in the information box, and I will send you a card and a small gift thanking you for supporting the show. And then on a monthly or perhaps bi-monthly basis, we're going to be doing giveaways. We're going to be drawing names from the pool of Riverdale residents and giving out free, cool stuff. Now, as I said, the show costs money. The show, takes a great deal of time setting up interviews, doing things like that. And it would be really great to have the funds to do something like get a better website put together, or travel, get interviews out at conventions and places like that. But also, what I'm proposing here is that if you become a Riverdale resident, if you are contributing money to the show, you are my patron, and I am therefore accountable to you. This puts the pressure on me to get a better product out to you guys. Doing the podcast for free, and it will remain free as long as it exists. Doing the podcast for free, I book guests when it's a priority for me or when it's easy for me. With money coming in from you guys, that becomes more of a priority. That becomes something that I need to do to pay it back to you guys. So we're going to try this out. We're going to see how this goes. You can head to RiverdalePodcast.com. As I said, on that left-hand side, you can go over there and click to contribute to the show in any denomination that you want. Become a resident of Riverdale, and I will then, in kind, give you the best show that I can week in and week out. On the way out today, I want to remind everyone to head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. There you're going to see the great Francesco Francavilla cover for this week's Book of the Week, Afterlife with Archie number 4. You're also going to get a link there to the New York Times article that broke all this great news about Alberto Aguirre-Sacasa and Lena Dunham and their new positions at Archie. You'll also find links to comicsworthreading.com. You'll find a link to all of Chris Sims' information over at about.me/Chris Sims. I wholeheartedly recommend the War Rocket Ajax podcast. Doing great stuff every week. I want to thank Johanna and Chris again for being a part of the show this week. I also want to thank John Troughton for calling in and leaving his thoughts over at RiverdalePodcast.com. You'll find a link to his blog, johntroughton.blogspot.com. Lots of great stuff going up there all the time. Also, at RiverdalePodcast.com, you'll find links to follow the show on Twitter, to like the show on Facebook. Write us an email at riverdalePodcast@yahoo.com. You can also call and leave a voicemail, just like John did, at 573-427-2443. That's 573-4-ARCHIE. The Riverdale Podcast is part of FirstComicsNews.com. Head over to First Comics News for breaking comic book news, podcast reviews, all of that. FirstComicsNews.com. So that's going to do it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. Please do consider becoming a resident of Riverdale over at RiverdalePodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening. Again, my name is Jonathan, and I'll see you again next week here in lovely Riverdale, USA.